He goes around to members of the white community at Monticello, in Charlottesville, I should say, and asks them to purchase his children for him, and that he will work and save his money and buy them back. And he's able to do that with most of them. There are 2 daughters who were sold out of the county, and we don't know what happened to them. But there was one son who was 11. The man who bought him reneged on the deal. So even though Fawcett and his wife were managed to save him a great amount of money, enough money to buy Peter back, the man refused to sell him to his parents. And there were other members of the family, the Hemingses, who were free, actually put up their property and bought some of his children. But Peter, the man would not sell him back to his family. So after the Nat Turner's revolt in 1831, things got really, really much worse for black people, free black people in Virginia. And so finally, the Fawcetts decided they're going to leave, and they come to Ohio. They come out to Cincinnati. And Joe Fawcett sets up a blacksmith shop here and works and keeps trying to get his son back. Eventually, there is something of a happy ending. Even though they don't find the 2 daughters that I mentioned, Peter Fawcett, when he gets to be an adult, is able to buy his freedom, and he joins his family in Ohio. And he becomes a caterer in Cincinnati and a minister. And he and his family become very much involved in the Underground Railroad, spiriting people out of slavery and into freedom. When he dies, there are a couple of obituaries, big obituaries for him in the Cincinnati. This is a guy, just think about it, who's 11, who is sold as an item, like a chattel. And he keeps going and joins his family and becomes someone who is well known and respected in his community. And I wanted to end with that anecdote, with that story, not Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson, because I think the Fawcett family, that line of the family really speaks to what I think is extraordinary about this family and so many other families, African-American families who began in slavery and persevered through unimaginable circumstances. Imagine having someone sell your kids, and then a person saying, I'm not going to sell you back your son. And having that kind of power to live in that kind of world that seems almost unimaginable. But these people never lost faith in one another, never lost faith in their own capacity to make a difference in their own lives, and they kept hope. And they were all together in the end and continued to struggle throughout the 19th century. And that's the story that I want to tell in my next book. So with that, I've told you about the Hemingses, and now I would like to take your questions.
You can take a seat.
Oh, that's right. I broke the protocol.
That's right. No problem. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to Annette Gordon-Reed, author of The Hemingses of Monticello. We will return to our speaker in a minute for our traditional City Club questions, and we encourage you to formulate your questions now, and we remind you to put your questions in a brief manner. We welcome all of you here, and those listening on WCPN 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Radio broadcasts of the City Club are made possible through the generous support of Case Western Reserve University. Our television partners are WVIZ, PBS IdeaStream, and Time Warner Cable. Television broadcasts are supported by National City, now a part of PNC, and Cleveland State University. Closed captioning is supported by Nordstrom Corporation. Our live webcasts are supported by the University of Akron. We are pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler and the Cleveland Foundation. Now, we would like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are City Club Assistant Development Director Marcella Brown and PR and Programs Manager Carrie Miller. Now, first question, please.
Ms. Gordon-Reed, I was so impressed with your book, and that I'm teaching a course in it this winter.
Oh, wow.
And Case Western Reserve Off-Campus Studies. Mm-hmm. And as a 45-year-old member of the City Club, I'm going to bend one of the rules and ask you a couple of questions instead of one. First, I'm very impressed with your bibliography, but I'm questioning how much of what you write about is supposition and how much is based on fact of what you got out of your bibliography. Two, I think, didn't Jefferson's wife on her deathbed ask him not to remarry? And wasn't that a reflection of not wanting her property to go to somebody else's children if he remarried because of inheritance? And she wanted her property to go to her daughters. And I think that may be a question, and I don't feel that was clear in the book. It sounded like it might be out of love, and I don't think love had anything to do with it.
Yeah. Well, I'll take the second one first. What she says, now this is according to the Hemings family. The Hemings families were the people who reported this deathbed request by Jefferson's wife that he not remarry. And what she says in the request, if you remember, is that she did not want another woman over her children. Now, over her children could in fact be related to property, but the thing, well, this is complicated. When a man and a woman got married during that time period, the woman's property became the man's property unless she had, what they had was a marriage settlement. Jefferson did not have a marriage settlement with his wife. So she did not carve out any property. She would not be able to tell him not to. Now, her mother did have a property settlement with John Wales. She carved out something. It's like a prenup, essentially. Jefferson and his wife didn't have a prenup. So she can't, once she marries him, the property is his. So she could not have any expectation that she could control where her property went, because she didn't have any property. It was his property. All right, so so that's number one. I think probably, if you take her at her word, if this is that she didn't want other women over him, she was John Wales's eldest daughter, and her mother died when she was about 2 weeks old. And as I said, he got married twice after that. And I don't really know, and we'll never know unless some other material comes to light, the forest, her home, John Wales's home, burned down. So lots of his records, all of his records are pretty much gone. We don't really know what the quality of her relationship was like with her stepmothers. It may not be just a matter of property. It could have just been, I don't want my daughters to have stepmothers. She may not have, her stepmothers had other daughters. She seemed to have had a good relationship with her half-sisters, her legal half-sisters, but we don't know what her relationship was like with her stepmother. And from her reported words, it seemed to be more an affective thing. You know, I don't want another woman over my daughters. Not, you know, I don't want other children to inherit stuff from my daughter, because as I said, she doesn't have any property. It may be, I do say at one point in the book, when people talk about Jefferson's daughters and how they would have responded to Sally Hemings, the worst thing that could happen in that situation, if for a man who was a widower and had children, would be for the widower to remarry, as you're suggesting, because then his property, it's not a question of being his wife's property given to anybody, but any property could go to the second set of children. And she may have felt that, but not in terms of keeping her property. It's just that maybe she didn't want to share property with her daughters, to have to share property with other kids. But that's not what she said. I mean, it seems to be, you can interpret it a different way. It just seems to be much more, I don't want them to have stepmoms, because I had 2 stepmoms. About supposition, well, it's hard to say. No historian, I mean, the notion that history books are full of only things people know with 100% certainty is just not true. I mean, I don't think that there's any more supposition in my book, and I would say it's less supposition in my book than appears in other history books. I mean, I did a lot of work, and I've thought about this now for many, many years. But there's we will never have we don't have a time machine. It's not a time machine. I can't rewind the tape and tell you exactly what happened. And if people are suggesting, other than sort of reference things, Jefferson was sworn in on, in March of, 1802, that kind of stuff you can have. But the rest of the stuff, it's always going to be about interpretation.